Hey, what's going on, guys? This video is for all my AV fam. It's pretty cold out here today. So I wanted to make a quick video on vegan activism, and of course there's no perfect form of activism, but there's definitely some forms of activism that are better than others. I think it's wrong to say that all activism is good activism. I think all activism has some sort of effect of raising awareness, but it's not always necessarily a good it's possible theoretically, for instance, to do a form of activism which is just not good for the movement. For instance, if you were to be violent, that's not in line with vegan principles. For people, for instance, who attack like one butcher or something, like one business. I've seen media articles spread about a butcher who, this small family butcher business was graffitied by vegans and stuff like that. Personally, I don't think that's a great form of activism, especially not if that person who owns the business is being like harassed, or if there's any aggression or any sort of personal I wouldn't say attack, but if there's any sort of anything that's personal against a business or a person, an individual in particular, I don't think that's really in line with vegan principles, and I don't think that's the best way of convincing people to go vegan or making an impact, a positive impact. So they're just a few examples I can think of off the top of my head. There's probably better examples out there. I think there's some fantastic forms of activism like the Cube, like AV. People like Joey Carbstrong or James Aspey, all these kind of guys that get onto big media platforms where they reach wider audiences, people who generally aren't vegan, for instance. National radio, national television, these sort of platforms, it's going to reach a lot of people. And potentially more than their YouTube videos even, for instance, in some cases, where you might get more vegans watching those than non-vegans sometimes. Okay, so with all of that said, I think we probably all agree there's some good and bad forms of activism, and we should all try and be active as much as we can. That's the definition of an activist, being active all the time. And before we get into it, I just want to say thank you for all the AV members watching this, for all your work, and thanks for Nick and all the people who organise it. You're all amazing, and I know a lot of you guys do just amazing work. Okay, so I'm going to link the webpage I used to assist my video today, which has the original article you can read, which I based a lot of these points off. Alright, first off, the first thing to being a really good vegan activist, I think, is being really well informed. So you've probably all heard this before, but we all have strengths and weaknesses, and there's definitely, when it comes to knowledge and what we know, obviously there's the three main pillars of veganism. There's health, there's the environmental side of it, sustainability, and then there's also arguably the most important one, and that's the animal rights side of veganism. So there's all kinds of different aspects of those three categories of veganism, and then there's also other stuff that people might ask or be interested in. So if there's any areas, maybe it's the environmental side of things, maybe it's the health side of things, but if there's any areas that you are not as well informed on, that's a really good thing to do in your spare time and when you can, to really read up on those in those areas and become really well informed. Okay, the second one is to play to your strengths. So, identify what sort of knowledge you need to improve on. That was the first point. The second one is identify your strengths. So for me, I'm strong, literally, and I compete in strongman. And for me, that's a form of activism because I'm able to have discussions about veganism with people who watch as well as fellow competitors, and I'm breaking the stereotype. There's a massive stereotype of meat eating in strongman, and even there's a lot of people who hunt and stuff like that. It tends to attract a lot of macho men. So for me, strongman is a great opportunity for me to do vegan activism, to wear vegan shirts, merchandise, to speak about it, and to do whatever I can to represent a strong or positive vegan image. So think about what your strengths are. What are you really good at in general? Are you really good at talking? Are you very persuasive, or are you just absolutely committed and willing to, be involved with events all the time? Are you willing to travel? Whatever it is, are you really passionate about animal rights? Whatever your strengths are, think about what they are and how you can best utilize them. Okay, the third thing is what messages to send. Okay, so it's a mistake that a lot of new activists make. It's definitely a mistake that I've made a lot, I guess, is thinking that we need a one-size-fits-all approach to veganism. I am an abolitionist in my philosophy, and I always encourage people to go vegan, absolutely. I think sometimes, however, it's okay to, if you've been having a conversation with somebody, it's okay, once you've got a read on them, to recommend that they maybe just try meatless Mondays, for instance, or maybe they should try going vegan just at breakfast, every day for breakfast. And then the next week they could try everyday vegan at lunch. And if it's going well, then they could try everyday vegan at dinner. Or maybe if you're having conversations with somebody over a prolonged period of time, you can at first recommend that they cut out dairy. And maybe with your conversations about dairy, they're keen to do that, but they're not ready to take the next step yet. So I think there is such a thing as people being at different stages. Some people, like I was one who almost went vegan completely cold turkey, but some people can do that. Some people can do it overnight, in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month. Some people need a lot more time. And remember the point system. Some people might only have a few points behind them towards understanding veganism. They might only have a bit of knowledge about health, or a bit of knowledge about animal rights, or a bit of knowledge about free-range eggs not being humane. So remember that people are at different stages, and it's not always ideal to recommend people just go vegan straight away like that. I think it's really important we give people the tools to be able to make steps towards veganism, whilst at the same time always encouraging veganism. I know it seems like I probably contradicted myself a few times there, but I definitely think that things like meatless Mondays, or going vegan at breakfast, going vegan at lunch, or ditching dairy, these kind of things are definitely important steps people can take. Okay. Target audience. So that's an important thing as well. So when you're doing something like the Cube, you're going to have people from all different backgrounds, obviously. If I'm doing something though, for instance, like strongman, I know the kind of audience that's going to be there. It's always going to be people interested in fitness. It's always going to be people interested in strongman or strength training. It's often going to be people interested in sport in general, and there's a lot of men involved with it. So I've got a very specific demographic there, and a lot of the men as well have a bit of a masculinity issue. They want to be seen as very masculine, which is fine, I understand that, but they don't really know what masculinity is. So that informs my activism as well, and the work I do on my YouTube channel. So know your audience. Everyone does different forms of activism. I know you guys do heaps of different kinds of activism. So if it's possible, if you've got a niche audience, target it towards them. Cater your messages to them. Alright. I know this is getting long, so I'll try and keep it moving along quickly. Social media. I think this is a really important one, and it's another area I've made a mistake with in the past. I think when we look at things from a psychological point of view, and by the way, I'm just going to drop a reference here as well to Carnism. If you're not familiar with Carnism, the psychological theory that the vegan psychologist, I think her name's Melanie Joy or something, came up with, then definitely check that out. I'll put a link in the description box. But I think the psychology of persuasion is really important when it comes to us being activists, because we basically are trying to convince people of changing their lives. When we use social media, I think a lot of us, including myself, post stuff too frequently. The reason for this is that I think if we're always posting stuff, it's possible that a lot of people will either stop subscribing to your posts. So for instance, if it's Facebook, I know that I had a strongman competitor who's not vegan, and he kept posting like gigantic steaks he was eating and stuff like that. And I got sick of it pretty quickly, so I just unsubscribed from him. So I don't get any of his posts now. I know that probably a lot of people have done that with me too, because of all my posts about veganism. We definitely need to post about it. I think social media is very influential, and probably a lot of people have gone vegan or made steps towards veganism, even that you know, due to your posts. However, I think at the same time it's really important that we consider how much we're posting and we be a bit strategic about it. I think if we post, for instance, one vegan post in every 8 or 9 posts that we make, we're probably going to get much better reception. We're going to get more people viewing the post and more people engaging with the post than if we post stuff every 5 seconds. If we're just continually posting stuff, I think people are just going to switch off. That's my opinion, and something I'm going to change with my social media practice is that I'm going to post stuff with less frequency. I think another important thing is when speaking to people, when posting things, it's important to get a good balance between positive stuff and negative stuff. Obviously, when you're posting about veganism, there's a lot of negative stuff which is necessary to make people aware of, because they're not aware of the cruelty involved with animal agriculture. They're not aware of the environmental damage. They're not aware of the damage it does to our health. But at the same time, if we continually present negative news, we have an effect that's not dissimilar to what we see on the news on TV. And people just switch off and they get really kind of defensive, or they sort of shut down and close up. We want people to open up to what we're saying, not become more removed from it. So I think it's also important to consider posting positive vegan stuff as well as negative stuff, and all of it's got to be persuasive, obviously, but you know, you can explain the benefits of having a diet which is cholesterol free, which is full of Jack Russell, full of things which prevent cancer, you know, things like that. You can promote on your social media pages the benefits, the amount of animals you can save by going vegan. You can promote all these kind of things, anything that's positive, and also teaches them. I'm a teacher, a school teacher, so and also the power of education. And obviously when we convince people to go vegan, or as they gather more points, it's also because they're learning a lot. Okay. Finally, always strive to find common ground in people, to win them over, and strive to achieve victories in private as well as public situations. And a final thing is always think big too. You know, do all the small things, be active in everything you do as much as you can, but also think big. We've got to think of really big things we can do, like the cube for instance, because this kind of activism is going to have the biggest impact, and that's what the animals need, that's what our planet needs, and that's what people need for their health too. Alright, that's it. Let me know what you think. You don't have to agree with everything I've said, and if you think that something I've said is wrong, I'm happy to have a good discussion about it. That's it. Keep doing all the amazing work that you do, and I really love all the help, support, activism that you guys do. Take it easy, and thank you for watching.